Yes. Hello, Ms.
Um,
Nagpal.
Hi, sir. Good
Yeah,
afternoon.
thank you for the reminder because I was in the panel session and that took longer than I had to leave then. Is there a way I can share my screen? Yep, share screen.
Yeah, yeah. Very good afternoon to everyone who's logged in. I'm Naina. I'm an executive committee member of NPPA, and on behalf of Team NPPA, I welcome you all to this keynote address on the topic Culturally Sensitive Positive Psychology Interventions, Bridging Western and Indian Approaches to Increase Mental Well-being. The speaker for this session is Dr. Tom Hendriks. Dr. Hendriks is a mental health and psychosocial support program developer and researcher. He currently works for the GZ Healthcare in the Netherlands and has developed a prevention program for refugees, which is running at over 60 Dutch asylum centers and has had over 2,200 refugee participants. Dr. Hendricks guides students from the master's program of global health at VU Amsterdam with their research internships. As a researcher, he is affiliated to the Department of Developmental Psychology, Tilburg School of Social Science, Social and Behavioral Science, Tilburg University in the Netherlands. He is a guest professor at the University of Suriname, where he has developed a bachelor's program, Introduction in Positive Psychology, and the master's program, Positive Mental Health. He is also an associate editor at the International Journal of Applied Positive Psychology. In his research, Dr. Tom focuses on the cross-cultural and intercultural application of positive psychology interventions among refugees and migrants. In addition, Dr. Tom is a long-time practitioner of Sahaj Yoga meditation. In his work, he integrates elements of Vedic psychology and yoga-based meditation in relation to the development of character strengths. Um, Thank you, sir, for being here with us. I
Yeah.
would just also quickly like to introduce the chair for this session, who is Dr. Rajneesh Chaubisa. Dr. Rajneesh is an associate professor of psychology in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at BITS Pilani campus. By training, he is a behavioral scientist and teaches courses related to his areas of interest, including organizational and positive organizational psychology. Before joining BITS Pilani, he was associated with the Department of Management at BIT Mesra, where he taught subjects like environmental psychology, industrial psychology, individual and group behavior, and business ethics to engineering and business students. In addition, he had a short stint of working with the Central University of Rajasthan, Kishangarh, where he served and led the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports sponsored Department of Sports Psychology. Dr. Rajneesh is in active pursuit of promoting the science of happiness and flourishing. We welcome you, Dr. Rajneesh, and I kindly request you to take over.
Thank you, Nana. Welcome, Professor Hendricks. We are very
Thank you.
eager to listen to you. And I think I should right away give the stage to you because you have already been introduced by Nana. So over to you, Professor Hendricks.
Yes, well, thank you, Professor Chubisi. If I pronounce your name right. Do you see all, can you all see my slides?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay, perfect. I will start then. This lecture will consist of two parts. In the first part, I will talk about cultural sensitive positive psychology interventions which are being conducted among refugees, both from my work, we're working with refugee youths and adolescents and adults. And in the second part of the lecture, I will talk about character strength development through yoga-based meditation. Since I'm a practitioner of yoga meditation since 50 years, since my wife introduced me to the practice of yoga. You can see a picture of us in India the last time we were there. And I'm also looking very forward to visiting India next week again. So let's start. Well, my main work is with refugees. And as there is a global refugee crisis at the moment. I mean, until 2022, we've seen a sharp rise of the number of refugees, particularly in the past 3-4 years. By 2022, there were over 100 million people who were displaced from their homes, and the situation has only worsened the past year, or actually this year, with the war in Gaza, and now perhaps the looming war in the Middle East. Hopefully that will not continue, but it is expected that the numbers of refugees will only increase. This has a profound effect on Western countries. Our society in the Netherlands is changing. I mean, up to 2021, we had 19,000 refugees per year on the average. Last year, or 2 years ago, we had 120,000, 90,000 from Ukraine, and many more from Islamic countries. It is expected that this year there will come around 90,000, and this changes the population. The current numbers of refugees is 200,000. If you consider that Holland has about 18 million people, that's more than 12% of the current population consists of refugees, and this causes a huge burden on the country. For example, housing prices over the past 4 years have almost doubled due to the shortages of houses. If you read the news and you hear about right-wing parties in the Netherlands becoming more popular, that's because of the refugee crisis. But this also has a large impact on the mental health, and that's why I want to focus on today. About 30%, 35% of the refugees, they went through terrible experiences and they're traumatized. They're traumatized, and they have post-traumatic stress disorders, anxieties, depressions. Their mental well-being is decreased, and it is very difficult also for them to attain mental health care through many barriers. Some of them are of course, the language they speak, or better said, the language that they don't speak, the Dutch. But they're also not familiar with the healthcare system. They don't know how to access it. And furthermore, there is, of course, a lack in trust in governmental organizations, in particular among refugees from countries like Turkey and Iraq, where they fled because of political prosecution. Then there's also cultural beliefs and religion, fear of self-stigmatization. In many countries, you don't seek mental health care because if you have mental health problems, you're crazy and you're an embarrassment to the family. This self-stigmatization leads many people to the situation that they do not seek help they need. Then there's also the lack of cultural sensitivity. The interventions that are available now, up to 2020, most interventions for refugees available were based on cognitive behavioral therapy, which does not match well with people from non-Western countries, or at least not people from the MENA regions. Fortunately, since 2020, new programs have been developed which are more culturally sensitive. Two examples are the Program Management Plus, which was developed by World Health Organization, which is based on CBT, but has a more strength-based approach. So not only focusing on the problems, but also on the factors of resilience and strengths that the refugees have. Then there's another program, Self-Help Plus, also developed by the WHO, which is based on acceptance and commitment therapy, which is grounded in Buddhist philosophy. Then there are several positive psychology interventions, which is really nice to see, particularly because up to 2018, positive psychology within the Dutch healthcare system and in the academic settings was not really taken seriously. But now we see that these positive interventions, they have a very good fit with people with a non-Western background. Examples are the METS program, the Seven Roses program, the Mosaic program for integration, work integration, and there's the Bamboo program. And that program we will be discussing a bit more in detail, because that's the program that I developed. And it is also the program that reaches the most people in the Netherlands as far as refugees is concerned. Now, the program that I developed is a continuation of the program I developed in Suriname, and positive psychology, a multi-component psychology intervention. It's gone through various stages, various phases of cultural adaptation. The Surinamese program was culturally adapted. Then I adapted that program for refugees in the Netherlands at asylum centers. And currently we have a program that's being developed specifically for refugees from Ukraine, which is a different population than the people from countries such as Syria and Iran. Back to Suriname, that's where my academic career started in 2011. I was working in business more, and I didn't feel that was the right direction for me. I married a woman, my wife, she's from Suriname. We went to Suriname, and Suriname is a country in South America. It used to be a Dutch colony, and people speak Dutch there. And it is a very multicultural society. I mean, after slavery was abolished, during the period of slavery, the Dutch brought people from Africa, the slaves from Africa. And after that, that period was had to end, people from Indonesia came, Java, and people from India. So at the moment, about 28% of the population in Suriname, they are from Hindustani. They are Hindustanis, and other people are there with a background: the Maroons, the Creoles, some African descent. The Javanese, mostly of them are Islamic, Chinese, Indians, and Europeans. So it's a very multicultural society. In fact, the current president is Hindustani, from Hindustani descent. So the ties with India are there. There are numerous holidays, like the festivals like Diwali are celebrated, the national days in Suriname. I worked for many years at the University of Suriname, where I did a PhD for the University of Amsterdam, where I focused on how can we adapt positive psychology interventions so they make a better fit with people from Western countries. Part of that study, I did a meta-analysis where I looked at the difference between positive psychology interventions which are conducted in Western countries, and I compared them to positive psychology interventions which were conducted in non-Western countries. And we see a very interesting difference. The efficacy of positive psychology in Western countries is usually small. They have small effects on subjective well-being, on positive psychological well-being, on depression and anxiety. And for this reason, positive psychology interventions in the Netherlands were not taken that seriously because the effect sizes are small compared to cognitive behavioral therapy. But when we look at the efficacy of positive psychologies that were conducted in non-Western countries, we see larger effects. We see, in my study, moderate effect sizes for subjective well-being and psychological well-being, and even large effects for depression and anxiety. And this was also found by a recent meta-analysis, very extensive meta-analysis, the best there is currently by Carr et al. I think it was published in the Journal of Positive Psychology. And it also suggested or reported that the effect sizes in general, overall taken for positive psychologies, is small in Western countries, but large in non-Western countries. So how can that be explained? Well, you can look at it from a very skeptical point of view, and we do indeed find that the overall study quality is lower than the studies conducted in Western countries. For example, there are no clear descriptions of the randomization process or how allocation took place or how participants were blinded, so this may cause bias. More importantly, studies are often underpowered, which does also may lead to an overestimation of the effect size. Also, the analysis, most studies do not have an intention to treat analysis. Or you could say, you know, in many non-Western countries, there's a novelty effect because people are not accustomed to interventions. But I looked at it also from another perspective, and I believe positive psychology interventions are as much as are more effective because they're less stigmatizing. They focus more on emotions. They focus on individual well-being, increasing that through collective pathways, and they allow for spiritual activities, meditation and prayers and rituals, which I will go into more now. Shortly, to test my hypothesis, I conducted a randomized controlled trial with 180 participants in Suriname, and I did indeed find, with a high-quality study, that the effect sizes, for example, for resilience, were large, but also for mental well-being, there was a moderate to large increase. Now we come to the Bamboo program. When I was giving a lecture in the Netherlands on my topic of cultural sensitive positive psychology, I was approached by the director of a large mental health care organization, which is responsible for the well-being of refugees at refugee centers. And they wanted to have a positive psychology intervention. So they asked me, could you have the intervention for Suriname? Could you adapt that to positive psychology interventions for refugees? Which I then did. And since 2020, this intervention has been running at over 70 refugee centers. We had over 3,000 participants. We currently have a team of 55 trainers, which I coordinate to implement the study all over the Netherlands, the program. So it's a strength-based intervention based on positive psychology. It has 5 sessions of 2 hours focusing on resilience, on emotions, on gratitude, on strengths, and setting positive goals. And it concludes role and drama playing, drawing, group discussion. It includes prayer and meditation, and positive character strengths affirmations. It is available in more than currently 10 languages. Most of the participants are Arabic speaking, from people from Syria and Yemen. And there's also quite a few people, substantial part from Eritrea, who speak Tigrinya. We did a feasibility study. And in this feasibility study, we also found, this was only a pre-test, post-test study, and we found also large, moderate to large improvements on resilience and happiness and positive and negative effect, which led us also to a pilot randomized controlled trial. We did one pilot study, which was a bit underpowered. It only had 28 participants randomized. So we only found positive effects on positive affect. If we were to do a similar study among the minimal required amount of participants, we would have also found significant results on resilience and other outcomes. So currently we are continuing our data. We're starting in 2 months a large randomized controlled trial in Rotterdam. There's a huge boat there with over 1,500 participants or refugees residing there, and we will try to collect data using a trial there. We also did a evaluation, and we found that particularly the writing exercises, they were not accepted by many of the people. I mean, we are working with it's very difficult to have an intervention that's suitable for people from an academic level. Some people are from Turkey or from Iran, they study at university, but some people are from the villages in Africa or in Syria. Some people do not even know how to hold a pen or know how to write. So it's quite difficult having the right intervention for them. So writing exercises were not, and homework assignments, and complex psychoeducation, and talking about negative thoughts that were not acceptable. But exercises that had to do with positive affirmations, with movement-based exercises, meditation and prayer, and strength-based exercises were well received. One example is one intervention I adapted was the intervention where you have to list 5 things for which you're grateful. standard practice in positive psychology. But if you work, for example, with people who have a low educational or who are young, like adolescents, if you ask them to write down five things, they freeze. They don't know what to do. So we have them first make a drawing of their hand, and then we ask them for each finger, write down something for which you are grateful. And that helps enormously. People immediately start drawing and they start writing down their words or even symbols in their hands for which they are grateful for. And then after that, you can have group discussion on gratitude. So this type of exercise allows you to list 5 good things, but in a more cultural sensitive way. We also let people, we do a visualization exercise where we have them imagine their road of resilience, what they've gone through in the past, where they want to go to in the future. As you can see here, there's a car on the road, and you can see it's the blood-covered fields below, and it goes to a more positive future in the at the top of the drawing. And then we ask them to, we have made a card deck with 24 character strengths from the VIA. It is available in 10 languages, and we discuss that. And we ask them, select 1 or 2 or 3 cards that you used on your road to the Netherlands. How did you survive the journey? And this allows them to talk about their trauma while also making this positive change. And we work with a card set in each session on different topics. There's one session where we focus on emotions, how to deal better with emotions through the character strengths, how to set positive goals. So this is the core of the intervention. And then there's the cultural sensitive meditation. Now we're getting more to the second topic of my lecture. Here you see a picture of a group of women, probably from Syria. That's the largest group of women we have, where they meditate. And you can see that they are, well, if you meditate with people from this population, they really like it. They go into prayer, they go into a state of prayer and meditation, but you could see them, they position their hands on certain they have their hands on specific parts of the body. And this has to do with, I was inspired to this through the practice of yoga. And I will tell you now, it's how you can adapt the principles of yoga to other cultures, and what the difference of this approach is with regular positive psychology approaches. Because in most positive psychology interventions, particularly the multi-component positive psychology interventions, they incorporated mindfulness-based meditation. MBSR, MBSP, there are several other programs, and this has been a tremendous change in the approach, particularly in the Western world. And this is also because many studies have been conducted on the effects of such interventions, and numerous hundreds, perhaps thousands of studies. They all indicate that the practice of mindfulness meditation increases our well-being. So many studies on anxiety, depression, cognitive functioning, etc. Interestingly, meta-analysis also suggests that the practice of mindfulness-based meditation is related to is associated with the development of character strengths. For example, compassion, kindness, gratitude, and creativity. Very, very interesting findings. So you would say, so why not incorporate mindfulness meditation with refugees? Well, basically, I would say mindfulness is a cultural sensitive meditation form. Think about this statement. Mindfulness is a current cultural sensitive meditation form for people in non-Western countries due to secular nature. When I was working in Suriname, mindfulness did not caught on with people from Suriname. And why should it? I mean, we have 1/3 of the people there they are Christian, but not Christian like in the secularized Christianity. In the Western countries, but they are really deep into these Christian congregations that actually warn against the practice of mindfulness, literally, because it's based on Buddhism, and they are very much against it because they only say Christ is the only way to redemption. So do not engage in mindfulness meditation. Then we have the people from Islamic backgrounds. They have their own practices, their Islamic practices. And then you have, I treated people, many people from Hindustani descent, and they have their yoga practices and all these rich cultures, rich knowledge from the Vedic scriptures and from their own religious traditions. So why would they focus on going into mindfulness meditation? And these many PPIs, they contain the practice of mindful meditation, and these theoretical aspects also, they are deeply rooted in Buddhist philosophy, for example, acceptance and commitment. And I worked together with one of the leading psychologists on global mental health, Joop de Jong, and he always questioned, these particularly mindfulness meditation is not suitable for refugees from Islamic countries, because they are much less importance of acceptance is that their construct of acceptance is much different. It's more about surrendering. Inshallah, it is God's will. Mindfulness only focuses on basically on the self, yourself, and not your connection with the divine. And for people from Islamic countries, their core values are based on Islam. The bedrock for resilience is their religion. So if you're going to implement mindfulness, you have to combine that in somehow with the Islamic principles. Mansour had an interesting study about that. They wrote an entire article on how you can adapt mindfulness practice in the rituals, in the prayer, being mindful there doing and not doing it from an automatic pilot. Helminski wrote an interesting book, The Sufi Path to Mindfulness, where he takes the concept of mindfulness, but then describes it from the perspective of Sufism. And there you have that connection, the connection with the divine, with the religion, which is absent in Western approaches of mindfulness. So when I was going in, when I was looking into the Sufism practice, in Sufism, there's the concept of Lataiva Sita. Those are the 6 subtleties and special organs of perception. They acknowledge the existence of a subtle body, the Jism Latif, and the subtle body. And these in Vedic terminology, these points in your subtle body are known as chakras. So the knowledge which from the yoga tradition is also known in the tradition of Sufism. In Indian philosophy, in Vedic philosophy, we have this whole theory of the chakras, of the Muladhara chakra, the Svadhisthana, etc. That these chakras, they are responsible for your physical and your mental well-being. And they have an equal part. They have a corresponding part to the latifas in Islam. So when we meditate, when I meditate with people from the Islamic countries, for example, we just ask them to place their attention on a specific part of the body, whether you call that body, but that is related to the chakra or the latifa, that's equal. And then when they ask, please give me the wisdom to take care of myself, when they focus on, for example, on the tailbone. And to whom do they ask this? Muslims, they immediately go into prayer and they ask for Allah to give them those strengths. So you're not, going to the self. You're not having self affirmations, but you're using actually incantations. You're actually asking the divine to install these qualities in you, or to reawaken these qualities. So that's how we do that so that's how I do it with refugees. If they're from Islamic countries, they immediately go into meditation and they ask Allah for that. If I work with people from African countries like Eritrea, which are Christians, they just ask Mary, or they just ask the Lord or Lord Jesus, give me the wisdom, or give me the creativity. But this combination of addressing your affirmations, your strengths, while focusing on a bodily part. In previous lectures, I heard several of the professors talk about this interoception, becoming more aware of your body. We integrate that with the character strengths approach. Now I'm going to show you a little video of how this is done in practice. So this is how participants, these are children, and they meditate according to the principles of yoga meditation in an Islamic setting. This was not done in the Netherlands. This was a project we did last year, or currently doing in Iran, which is really special because it's a very repressive regime. I mean, the practitioners of yoga there, it's forbidden to practice yoga. I have acquaintances 5 years ago, they got arrested for practicing yoga, and they spent over 2 years in jail without any formal charge, but they merely were in jail for over 2 years because they practiced yoga, which is rather strange, of course. And this study was conducted in Tehran under the guidance of the university there, where students practice this yoga-based meditation form. Now we come to the subject of yoga, and there are many forms of yoga. There are, I don't know how many, but they're very, very different streams of yoga meditation. I got to know the practice of yoga through a form called Sahaja Yoga meditation. And it is a yoga-based meditation form, but it incorporates the knowledge and the practices from all world religions and philosophies, not only from the Vedic tradition, but from the yoga traditions, not only from Hinduism, but also from the Western traditions, the Greek traditions, the Chinese tradition, from Jainism, from Sikhism. Basically, we consider all holy scriptures as different chapters of the entire book, and each chapter has its own way of teaching people how they can become healthy. And we follow the teachings of Shrimataji Nirmala Devi. She was an Indian, so we would say a guru, but she'd rather call herself mother. She was married to the former secretary of the Maritime Organization of the UN, was based in London for many years. And she developed a whole technique to achieve the state of thoughtless awareness, mind emptiness, through a systematic approach of Kundalini awakening. Now, this should not be confused with Kundalini yoga, because Kundalini yoga aims to awaken the Kundalini, but does not provide you with systematic techniques to awaken this inner force we call Kundalini, which is a motherly force which guides us. And it can easily bring you into a state of thoughtless awareness, Turiya Avastha, which is a state that is characterized by relaxation and calmness at first. But you have also an increased alertness and deeper attention. You become aware of everything around you. It is also referred to as, the state of mental silence or thoughtless awareness. And during that state, and when you're in that state, when you come out of that state, you experience deep feelings of joy, bliss, serenity, and connectedness. Not only connectedness to yourself, to your whole entire being, but also to the divine, and to the universe, or to the nature. You could say that it is compared in Western science. We do study the state of flow, and the state of flow can be compared to Turiya Avastha, although state of flow is often you get into a state of flow because of activities, and this is not in the case of meditation, where you do not really go into a certain activity. Interesting psychological aspects is that in this state of meditation, you will get insight. You will get insight when you completely are devoid of your thoughts. Thoughts may arise. Insight into who you are. Socrates already stated that you should know thyself. You can only get to know yourself through introspection, but you have to enter that state of consciousness where you're first devoid of thoughts, and then you can get insight into your own patterns of your behavior. And based on those patterns and knowledge, you can adjust your behavior. It can also help you with trauma processing, and I will explain that a bit later, and strength development. Some science first, because it's important to know what are the effects of this form of meditation. I did in 2016 a systematic review. It's not a widely practiced form of meditation. It's not like a mindfulness practice that has hundreds and thousands of studies. There are some studies, and there's all reported a reduction in anxiety and depression. Several studies recently have been conducted at universities in India among students. You see reduced academic stress, increased self-esteem, social intelligence, general health and well-being. Hopefully you can get a copy of this PDF, and I advise you to watch a very interesting lecture on YouTube by Professor Rubia, who's one of the top researchers in the field of neuroscience, works at King's College in London, where she talks more about the medical science behind this. While there may not have been many studies, there have been high-quality studies, neurological studies. And these studies point out that long-term practitioners, they have a large gray matter volume in their brains compared to non-meditators. These are areas they are associated with more control and feelings of compassion and introspection. We also see an increased gray matter density, self-control, self-awareness. All these mechanisms that play a key role in the development of character strengths, they increase when you practice this form of meditation. And we also see large white matter tracts. More interestingly, there were studies that focus on the relationship between this form of meditation and the building of character strength. A large randomized controlled trial among managers, they found increased feelings of wisdom and forgiveness, inner harmony, experiencing a world of beauty, more mature love, and feelings of authenticity. These are character strengths, and these character strengths can be developed even after 4 weeks practice of meditation, which is an amazing finding, because other studies, for example, on the MBSP program, the Mindful-Based Strengths Practice, they do not find the development of certain character strengths after a short term of meditation among another study. I cannot discuss them all because we are short in time. I would more like to go to a study that I did myself. I compared over 300 practitioners of Sahaja Yoga meditation with a VIA database, over 1,600 people, to compare whether people from meditate, how they compare to non-meditators. And we find a significant difference in 26 of the 28 character strengths. Interestingly, not on judgment, because judgment in meditation, you actually learn not how to judge, to become a state of non-judgmental. And love of learning, which is also interesting, because in the VIA questionnaire, love of learning is a Western way of measuring love of learning through reading books, while there are so many other ways of learning. For example, learning to dance. A lot of the meditation practitioners, they learn Indian classical music, how to play an instrument, or they learn to dance in Kathak or other forms of learning. 7 of them were significantly higher, or they were also significantly, but 7 we had really medium, moderate to very large effects. That was in spirituality and forgiveness, and gratitude, teamwork, and hope. And the consequences, what does this say? Well, basically, I believe that different forms of meditation, they can elicit different character strengths. People who practice mindfulness may develop different character strengths than people who practice Sahaja yoga-based meditation. And perhaps other forms of meditation or yoga meditation are more are focused on developing different character strengths. And this is, our research suggests that groups of people who engage in specific meditation or spiritual practices may develop a specific set of character strengths. And what future studies could go further into to that. It will be interesting to develop different topographies to customize the development of strengths. As said before, in Sahaja Yoga, there's an entire system that relates the chakras to different character strengths or strengths. Here are 6 of the major character strengths. We do not have time to go deeper into that. You can read that in my publications that I've done. This model suggests that, for example, the Muladhara chakra, the first chakra, it is connected to character strengths such as innocence, wisdom, and chastity, wisdom and joy in character strengths. And this is very important because last year I had a conversation with Ryan Nemich, who's the director of the Vaya Institute. And the relationship between character strengths and the body he knew, and the chakras he knew. For example, if you ask anybody where is love situated, everybody would point out to their heart. There's no doubt about that. But I asked him, where would you place forgiveness? And he didn't know. And I told him, and forgiveness is something that is in your Agya chakra. It is related. The forgiveness is the capacity to let go of the grudge you hold inside. And that's a character strength. There's a strength that's located at the Agya chakra level. So every chakra has specific, of course, they're all interconnected. So it's not only a one-on-one, but each chakra has a specific quality, which can be related to the character strengths in positive psychology. And what is also, when you work according to this form of meditation, we feel what later I've come to know as the subjective experience of the Param Chaitanya. You can feel that Param Chaitanya energy. You can feel the cool breeze, actually. Your body temperature drops and you can feel you're surrounded by something which in Christian traditions has been described as the cool breeze of the Holy Ghost, and which in Islam, the Prophet Muhammad referred to as the Ruh, as the divine wind. The old Greeks named it the Puna. So, and you have what's also interesting, vibratory awareness. This is a topic which I could talk more about. People are becoming more aware of the vibrations of the energies that surround us. And this will only increase that vibratory awareness. And interestingly, there is another level to Sahaja Yoga because it relates the character strengths and the chakras to the deity system. Basically, deities guide they watch over our character or our chakras. And by meditating on specific deities, you can develop certain qualities, certain character strengths. And I will talk to that about an example. There was 2 years ago, I met a student of mine at the Tilburg University. She was a 24-year-old girl from Germany. She had a Christian background, but was not really connected to any religion and whatnot. And she came to me because she said, I have a complete, or I think my Kundalini awakened. So I talked to her about her, and she said, she described that moment, how she sat under a tree and felt this swirling sensation. She felt an energy coming up and going through her head, and then she went to a state of complete bliss. And after that, she innately her behavior changed. She innately became dharmic. All the things that she used to do, like drink alcohol, she stopped. She stopped going to bars. She stopped going to all this type of behavior, which is normal in the West, but goes against her spirit. That was automatically corrected. And she told me this, like, when I feel depressed or I feel emotional, I take the names of Sri Durga. She didn't, or Sri Mahakali. She didn't know anything about this theory, but she just came across some names of Mahakali. There was no theory for herself behind it. And she started taking these names. And in our philosophy of Sahaja Yoga meditation, Mahakali guides over our left channel, the Ida Nadi. So if you're too much on the left side, you are very emotional. You go towards depression. So if you meditate on this and you invite those powers of the Mahakali, you get more into balance. You develop this emotional stability. Another case was a man I treated once. He was agnostic, actually. He didn't even believe in Christ, so he was not familiar with the deities. But he had a terrible fear. He had he had a fear in his heart, and he had a fear for authoritarian figures. He could not flourish in his work because every time he had to have a presentation for his superiors, he just was silent and he was filled with fear. And he started meditating, on the names of Sri Durga. And he told me a really interesting experience that he had, because he was taking these names of the Holy Durga. And he said, in my dreams, after, I felt when I was reciting these mantras, I felt a vibration. And this vibration elicits dreams. And he started recurring the trauma that he started dreaming of the bullies that bothered him in his past. And he said, one night I meditated. These bullies, they were torturing me again. And suddenly on a tiger, a woman came with 6 arms, and she slashed the head of the bullies that were bothering me. He woke up with a feeling of power in his chest. And from that moment on, that fear was gone. It was, and he was able to function very strongly because he was invoking these powers of the deity in himself. And mind you, this is not a Hindu person. This is a person who was taught to raise that Kundalini and simply do the mantras for Sri Durga. I have to start closing down. We are currently, we have developed a program called the Inner Strength Program, which combines the Sahaja Yoga meditation fully, which is very interesting in the Ukrainian culture. You see here the symbol which shows us the statue of Mother Berinia, and that mother is an archetype, and that is comparable to the deity. This is a depiction I found, depiction in Ukraine culture of this holy mother who's about to slice off the head of a wolf. But you see the depiction of her dress. It is the subtle system which is known in Indian philosophy. And when Sri Mataji, the originator of Sahaja Yoga, went to Ukraine, in Holland she would come and 100 people would show up. In Ukraine, over 5,000 people would show up, because in Ukraine there's much belief in this power of the feminine power, the feminine goddess, which is known in Slavic cultures and the Maria archetype. So we have that program now in Ukraine, which is going to hopefully roll out there. We come now to my future studies. Perhaps we can start a discussion later, or perhaps I'm very much open to participating. I want to focus on the bodily awareness of character strengths. So where do they experience these character strengths? Find that more out. Can that be linked? Like there's also studies on the body maps of emotions, where we feel emotions. Can we also sense our character strengths in our bodies? And does that difference between people who practice meditation or not? The origins of the subtle system, I hope to find more about that in India. And I'm currently working on a program, Shiva Tattva. It's an online program for meditation, which focuses more on cultivating specifically emotional detachment and fearlessness, with meditation focused mostly on the heart section. So I want to finalize this lecture with the future directions of positive psychology. I think it's about time that we move beyond mindfulness. Now, mindfulness has been a great step forward in positive psychology and in healthcare, but it's time to take the next step. We know that there are several states of consciousness, which also in Western science are all known, but also in Indian tradition, the highest state is Turiya Avastha. And that's not a state of mindfulness, but that's a state of mind emptiness. It can be argued, of course, that when you're mindful, you immediately go into that state of anti-mindfulness. But I think it is a different step, because when you want to reach that state of thoughtless awareness, you want to connect that. And then we come back to the origins, I would say, of positive psychology. I got to positive psychology because the pyramid of Maslow, and his initial pyramid, he was the highest. He said self-actualization is the highest stage. In 1970, he revised his model. He said, no, it is not self-actualization, it's transcendence. It's self-realization that's the highest state. And self-realization is that connection of the self, of the psyche of the self with the higher self. Self-transcendence is self-realization, and self-realization is basically what the yoga term is. Yoga, the union of the Atma with the Paramatma. And the way you can do that, I find a very effective way, is through the awakening of Kundalini. And even the great psychiatrist, he already knew it. Carl Jung already knew that, and he was one of the first ones who brought the knowledge from the India to the West. And he also described how this can be attained through the awakening of Kundalini. So, and a lot has said, we know about positive psychology, the first wave of development that focused on happiness and integrated knowledge from the West. We know about the positive psychology 2.0. Yesterday, we had a very interesting talk of Paul Long, who really brought the importance of integrating that Buddhist philosophy into psychology, into positive psychology. And what's the directions? There are several people who argue for positive 3.0, but if you ask me, I would say that positive psychology, third wave, should focus on self-realization by incorporating the knowledge from all major world religions and philosophies. So not only from Western approaches or the Buddhist approach, but also from Islam, from Hinduism and yoga, from Sikhism and Jainism. And we should focus on character strengths. So I leave you now with the one of the most influential leaders in our times, with Gandhi, who already made very clear to us that this inner peace can only be attained if we become like God. And this realization of the self is described in all the scriptures, in the Gita, and in all and everything. So I would like to thank you. Also, I will be going to India next week, and I will be visiting the ITT in Delhi. I'm very much thankful for this opportunity to also have a lecture there. So those who are able to come on the 8th of May, I would hope to see you in person. Thank you very much. And if you have any further questions, we can start a discussion now.
Thank you, Professor Hendriks. We have some time left, so maybe we can have a couple of questions with the audience. If there is anyone who is willing to ask or who is interested to know more about Professor Hendriks' work, please raise your hand so that we can take those questions. If there is no one, then I do have a couple of questions which I would like to pose to Professor Hendriks. May I, Professor? May I, Professor Hendriks? May I ask you some questions?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. As far as positive psychology interventions are concerned, I and Professor Singh, we have initiated working on positive psychology interventions way back in 2007, because that was my research area and I was very much intrigued by that concept.
Yeah.
At that point of time, there was only one paper which was available, and that was the empirical validation of interventions, which was published in American Psychologist in 2005.
Yes.
Then when I started doing my work, in between, like in 2009, there was again a paper which was published by Sin and Lubomirsky. Like you must have gone through that paper as well. Sin and Newomowski 2009, where they have conducted a meta-analysis. So my first question to you is, like, when we are conceiving, when we are tailoring these interventions, sometimes we take an approach which is a CBT based approach. Sometimes we take an approach which is an MBSR based approach, and sometimes we take an approach which is actually a PPA approach. So how to differentiate that the exercises which we are including, which we are tailoring, they are actually PPA based. So this is question number one. In your slide, I mean, in one of your slides, you have mentioned that there are a few exercises which have low impact, and there are a few exercises which have high impact, like you have differentiated between low and high. So you mentioned that writing type of exercises where we are making the audience or the respondents or the subjects write something and interact is not good or less better than engaging them in some sort of activities, like making them do yoga or making them do Sahaj yoga or something like that. So since we engage with these respondents in an online mode, like if we are interacting with them physically, then what you are suggesting is perfectly right. But when we are interacting with them in an online mode, right, when we don't have access to what they're actually doing, how to differentiate as to which of these activities they would like to engage in and which one they won't. So this is my second question. And third question is related to the individual differences, like you are working on culturally sensitive interventions. So of course, there would be people who have, there are people who have individual differences. So your program like Mosaic or Bamboo, when you are using them, or when you're using that program, or when you are implementing that program, how sure are you that that is going to work on those refugees or asylum seekers, and they would definitely get help from that program? So these are the three questions which I have. Over to you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Very interesting questions. Let's answer them one by one. The first one is how could you captivate the essence of the first question?
Yeah.
So,
first question is, because when we talk of CBT or when we talk of MBSR or any of the approach like acceptance and commitment therapy, taking the theoretical model and then conceiving or tailoring the exercises like what the person or the respondent is supposed to do. How do we differentiate that? And you don't remember, but there was one instance where a similar type of question has come to you, and we were interacting on a different platform. So I suggested that, CBT or the PPI, how do you differentiate? Like if I have conceived some exercises which are writing based exercises where I'm telling the student or people to do something, how do you differentiate? So that's the first one.
Okay, well, I think for most, if I make a program, I see to it that the large majority of the exercises are based on positive psychology. So they originate from the original exercises. For example, if we have a topic on emotions, we start with recognizing positive emotions. And then we do all kinds of activities to focus basically on increasing these positive emotions through gratitude interventions. But you have to adapt. You can adapt that, like I said, instead of writing down 5 things like a list, you're working with young people, or you're working with people who are not really triggered by this cognitive approach. You can work by making a drawing first. That's one aspect. And for all, sometimes I believe that we are going to more of a hybrid form where we take the best practices of each stream. So we have the best practices on the most suitable practice from a cognitive behavior approach, like reframing, and we take the best practice of positive psychology. And what is interesting to see, for example, the problem management plus, which they say is completely based on cognitive behavioral therapy, has so much elements of positive psychology. It's not so much black and white anymore. Specifically, if you work with the character strengths based model, we work with these cards. We have these cards, and then we ask them, if you reframe, you can reframe your ideas. So you can take principles from cognitive cognitive behavioral therapy, like positive reframing, and use that on the basis of this model, which was developed in positive psychology. So it's not really black and white anymore. Like, okay, here we have, it's more like a mix. Same with positive psychology interventions. They often contain mindfulness meditation, which is a different form. So I hope that answers a bit of your question. And I think, how do you differentiate? Well, I look at there are some important factors which you have to also, if you have an intervention, you need to know the age group you're working with. That's very important. You know, obviously, if you're working with young people or with children, that's different from adults. And then you can make it with children. You should have it more entertaining, not so heavy.
Yes.
With it's also, you know, working with the refugees, there's a huge difference between men and women. Because when you ask someone, we have a program and you have like 20 minutes for an exercise. And if you talk, for example, about an intervention where you talk about emotions, if you talk with men, you know, what were your emotions during that period, during your travel? The answers are like, you're finished in 5 minutes. But if you talk with women, they talk so much more. They are so much more aware of their emotions that, you know, you should take that into account. And then the major factor is also the religion, of course. If I work with Muslims, if we go into meditation, I don't say, I just address it generally. I just say, well, pray to Allah if you want. But if I do that with Christian, I use the same affirmations, but they themselves attribute that to in the form of their religion. When I work with Dutch people, I'm not going to say, God, please give me those characteristics, because they don't want to do that. Right. If I work people from Hindustani, they are they feel very comfortable speaking to the Devi, you know, as the mother in them. So you adapt that to that particular for example, if I work with Muslims, you know, there's a really strong affirmation for forgiveness. I don't do that with my Muslim clients because that is a sensitive topic, especially among refugees who some have been tortured. And, you know, this may trigger too much. People from a Christian background have less problems with the power of forgiveness. And then there's also literacy. I mean, we have women from villages who really do not, you have to teach them how to hold a pen. And then we have people in the program who worked at the university. So, and when you work people at the university, we can talk more about resilience. We can talk about deeper what resilience is. You can put in theoretical approaches to that with people who don't have an academic background. You say, oh, it's just resilience is the power to get up on your feet again. You work more with metaphors. So you have the basic elements, but you adjust those elements to the level of the participants, which is a challenge, but it's also very interesting to do. But I have like a basic format, and for 60% that remains the same, but then I adapt it to a specific target group, and that you do using focus groups. You know, you want to know who is your target audience through qualitative research, focus groups. You can ask feedback from them, what they find important, what are their values, and what factors. And both focus groups with healthcare professionals who work with this group and the targeted population itself.
Okay, thank you, Professor Hendriks. We do have a couple of questions, but since the time for the next session has already come, so I would be mailing them on behalf of all the participants who have had a wonderful time listening to you. Over to you, Nana. Thank you very much, Professor Hendriks.
Yes. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I would just quickly like to thank Professor Hendriks for being here and for sharing your knowledge and research with us. I'm sure all of the attendees have had some great learnings and takebacks. Thank you, Professor Rajneesh, for chairing this session and sparing your time with us. And thank you to the audience for being patient and enthusiastic listeners. I request Keith to now take over.